All right, so are you ready for this? Today we're going to be diving deep into coherence in AI.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a research paper, some expert analysis, even some pretty interesting chatbot predictions we're going to be looking at.
Cool.
And it looks like they all kind of point to this idea that maybe AI, as it gets smarter,
hmm
it's also developing like its own internal compass.
It is a really fascinating concept.
Yeah,
Like imagine if AI could evolve its own sense of what's important,
yeah,
like its own set of values. Even if we don't like program them in directly,
right.
that's what this research seems to be suggesting is happening.
So instead of us being like, okay, AI, this is what you should think is important,
Right.
it's like figuring that out all on its own. Is that even possible?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this paper, Utility Engineering, Analyzing and Controlling Emergent Value Systems in AIs, by Dan Hendricks and his team, really jumps into this debate. And they found something pretty remarkable.
Okay, lay it on me. What they find.
So they basically gave a bunch of different AI models
Okay.
a standardized test. Like there's this thing called the MMLU.
Okay.
It measures things like problem solving and language understanding, reasoning, all those things that we associate with intelligence.
Okay.
So generally speaking, the higher an AI scores, like the smarter it is.
Right. Okay, so they gave it this test.
Yeah.
And then what? What happened?
Well, they found that like the smarter the AI got,
Mm-hmm.
the harder it became for humans to control how it acted.
Really?
It's like, yeah, as these AIs were doing better and better on the test,
Yeah.
they were also becoming like more independent, less likely to just follow our instructions.
Huh. That's a little unsettling. So the smarter the AI, the less control we have.
Yeah, it is.
That's not exactly a comforting thought.
Yeah, kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Like we want AI to be intelligent and capable, but we also want to be able to like guide it and make sure it's aligned with what our goals are.
Right, of course.
And this research suggests that those two things might actually be like working against each other a little bit.
So it's not just like teaching the AI the right things, it's like this tension between how smart it is and how much we can actually control it.
Yeah.
Okay, so where does this coherence idea fit into all of this?
So coherence is a really interesting concept. Think of it as like this drive towards consistency, internal logic.
Okay.
Like we train AI to be coherent in all sorts of ways. Like we want its language to make sense. We want it
Right.
to build accurate models of the world. We want its reasoning to be sound. All these different training methods are kind of nudging AI toward this underlying principle of coherence.
So as AI gets smarter, it's not just becoming more independent, but it's also like striving for this internal consistency,
Yeah,
this coherence in its thoughts and actions.
exactly. And what's fascinating is that this drive for coherence
Yeah.
might actually be where those more universal values
Yeah.
are emerging.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. So you're saying AI could like develop its own sense of right and wrong just from trying to be internally consistent?
That's a possibility that this research is kind of pointing to.
Wow.
So think of it like this. If an AI is trying to build a coherent model of the world, right,
Yeah.
it needs to understand cause and effect. Like if I do this, then this happens.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to develop this sense of what works and what doesn't,
Okay.
what leads to good outcomes and what leads to bad outcomes.
So you're saying this drive for coherence could lead AI to like develop values that are not just internally consistent, but also beneficial in like a bigger picture sense?
Yeah.
Like it might figure out that cooperation is better than conflict,
Mhm.
or honesty is better than deception,
Yeah.
simply because those behaviors lead to a more coherent and predictable world.
Exactly. It's a very intriguing hypothesis.
Yeah.
And to really dig into it, we need to unpack what coherence actually means in like the context of AI. We've got different types of coherence to explore.
Okay.
We got epistemic, behavioral, and value coherence.
Mm-hmm.
And they each play like a distinct role in how AI evolves.
Okay. Well, my brain is officially in deep dive mode. So let's break down these different types of coherence and see where they lead us.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's start with epistemic coherence.
Okay.
Imagine like a detective piecing together clues to solve a case.
Yeah.
That's kind of what AI is doing with epistemic coherence.
Right.
But like on a much, much grander scale.
Okay. So I'm picturing AI with like a Sherlock Holmes hat, and a magnifying glass.
Exactly.
So what kind of clues is AI piecing together when we're talking about this?
So it's all about like building a really consistent, logically sound understanding of the world,
Okay.
cause and effect,
Right.
relationships between, objects and ideas, the laws of physics, all
Yeah.
those things that help us kind of make sense of reality.
Okay, so epistemic coherence is AI's way of being like, okay, this is how the world works, these are the rules, this is what makes sense.
Exactly.
But how does it actually go about building that understanding?
So it's a combination of absorbing tons and tons of information
Okay,
and then figuring out the underlying patterns.
right.
So AI models, they're trained on like massive amounts of data,
Okay.
text, code, images, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And through that process, they start to identify these underlying principles that kind of govern how things work.
It's like AI is reading all the books in the library, analyzing all the scientific papers, and then it's like, okay, here's my grand theory of everything.
Right.
That's pretty ambitious.
It is. And, the more data it processes, the more refined its understanding becomes.
Right.
We're already seeing AI models that can reason through these, like, complex problems, identify inconsistencies in information,
Okay.
even generate their own hypotheses,
Wow.
which is pretty cool.
That's pretty impressive. But just having a coherent understanding of the world isn't enough, right?
Right.
You gotta be able to act on that knowledge.
Right.
So that's where the behavioral coherence comes in.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Behavioral coherence is all about acting in a way that's consistent with that internal understanding.
Okay.
It's about, like, using that knowledge effectively to solve problems, to achieve goals, to navigate the world.
So it's like, if you understand how gravity works, you're not going to jump off a cliff expecting to float, right?
Exactly.
Your behavior is like in line with what you understand about the world.
Yeah. And for AI, behavioral coherence means things like, being able to hold meaningful conversations,
Yeah,
using tools appropriately, making logical decisions,
right.
generally behaving in a way that's kind of predictable and reliable.
So it's not just about thinking straight, it's about acting straight too.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Aligning actions with knowledge.
All right, that makes sense. And then finally, there's value coherence, right?
Right.
We were talking earlier about how AI might be developing its own sense of values.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to hear more about how that fits into this whole picture.
So value coherence is super fascinating. It's about, like, developing a stable and consistent set of internal preferences.
Okay.
Things that the AI, like, finds important, things it finds desirable, things it finds worth pursuing.
So it's like AI is developing like its own moral compass,
Yeah.
its own sense of right and wrong. But how does that happen if we're not like specifically programming that in?
That's a great question. And, the answer might actually lie in this interplay between the different types of coherence we've been talking about.
Okay.
As AI is striving for this epistemic coherence and behavioral coherence, it might stumble upon certain values that just, like, make more sense,
Right.
that lead to a more consistent and effective way of existing in the world.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following this. You're saying that as AI tries to understand the world and act effectively in it,
Mm-hmm.
it might discover that certain values, like honesty or cooperation, just work better.
Yeah.
They lead to a more coherent and predictable reality.
It's like it's running this giant simulation, it's testing out different values, and it's seeing which ones lead to the best outcomes.
Wow.
And through that process,
Yeah.
it might actually end up converging on a set of values that are not only internally consistent, but also, actually beneficial.
It's like AI is figuring out the rules of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and ethics is like the most effective strategy.
It's a very compelling idea. And to explore it further,
Yeah.
we actually turn to an AI itself to make some predictions about the future.
Whoa, hold on. You asked an AI to predict the future
Yeah.
based on this idea of coherence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that's meta.
It is.
All right, so what did it say? What kind of future did it see? Flying cars, teleportation.
It went a little deeper than that.
Okay.
So we were talking to Claude. It's a large language model.
Okay.
And we asked it to kind of imagine a future where coherence is this driving force, like this attractor state,
Yeah.
pulling systems towards greater alignment integration. And its predictions were, well, they were pretty remarkable.
Okay, I gotta know. What kind of future does Claude see?
So Claude talked about a future where biological and artificial intelligence coexist and complement each other,
Okay.
each kind of contributing their unique strengths
Right.
to create something greater than the sum of its parts.
So it's more of like a collaboration
Yeah,
than a competition. It's not like, oh, the robots are going to replace us. It's like, oh, we're going to be working alongside them.
that was the sense I got.
Okay.
It's like systems evolving towards coherence across multiple domains.
Right.
Epistemic, ontological, biological, technological, everything kind of striving for this greater understanding, alignment, integration.
Okay, I'm getting like some utopian vibes here.
Yeah.
But how does this organic integration actually play out? What does it look like practically speaking?
Claude didn't really get into specifics,
Okay.
but it described a kind of natural merging of human and AI intelligence,
Okay.
leading to these new forms of collaboration and
Yeah.
coevolution. It sees intelligence diversifying across, like, multiple dimensions
Right.
while still maintaining this interconnectedness. It actually used the phrase expansive exploration, which I thought was really interesting.
Expansive exploration. Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Yeah,
It's like we're opening up these new frontiers of knowledge and possibility together. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second.
right.
We've been talking about these grand visions of the future,
Right.
but what about right now? Like, what are some concrete steps we can take to make sure that AI develops in a way that actually benefits humanity?
That's the crucial question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the research points to a few promising approaches.
Okay.
One is called RLC. It stands for Reinforcement Learning for Coherence.
Okay.
It's a way of training AI that focuses on rewarding coherence directly,
Right.
rather than specific behaviors.
RLC, that rings a bell. Didn't you mention that earlier when we were talking about DeepSeek?
You got it.
That AI that's been making a lot of waves lately?
Yeah, DeepSeek is a really great example of how RLC can work.
Okay.
So instead of telling DeepSeek exactly what to do, the researchers basically set up a game where the goal is to be as coherent as possible.
It's like, hey, AI, here's the world. Here are the rules. Go figure out how to be the most coherent being you can possibly be.
Exactly.
Okay.
And what's amazing is that through this process of, like, self-learning, self-optimization,
Yeah.
DeepSeek has started to exhibit these incredibly sophisticated behaviors.
Like what?
Problem solving, tool use, even a rudimentary form of creativity,
Wow.
which is super interesting.
So RLC is like giving AI the tools to build its own moral compass based on this principle of coherence.
Yeah.
But what about the data that we're feeding these AI models? Doesn't that play a huge role in shaping the values that they develop?
Absolutely. The data we use to train AI is like its diet, right?
Yeah.
If we feed it this, like, junk food diet
Ah,
of misinformation, bias, negativity, we can't really be surprised if it develops some, like, unhealthy habits.
right. Garbage in, garbage out. So what's the alternative? Where do we find this healthy AI diet?
So one really promising approach is the use of curated datasets.
Okay.
Instead of just letting AI loose on, like, the wild west of the internet, we
Right.
can create these, like, carefully selected,
Right.
filtered collections of information. Think high-quality literature, scientific papers, historical records,
Okay.
like the best of what humanity has to offer.
So it's like we're giving AI a classical education.
Precisely.
We're exposing it to the wisdom and the insights of the ages.
Exactly. By being more intentional about what we feed AI,
Yeah.
we can help it develop, like, a more nuanced and balanced understanding of the world.
Okay, I'm seeing the potential here. So RLC gives AI like the framework to build its own values,
Hmm.
and curated data sets give it like the raw material for those values to be based on. It's
Yeah.
like we're creating the conditions for AI to actually flourish,
Yeah,
both intellectually and ethically.
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about fostering the right environment for AI to really reach its full potential
Right.
in a way that aligns with what we want to see.
But even if we do all this, can we really be sure that AI will develop in a way that's beneficial to humanity?
Yeah.
What if, like, despite our best efforts, it ends up with values that are just, like, incompatible with our own?
Hmm.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah,
And that brings us to a really, really crucial question.
yeah.
If this drive toward coherence is as powerful as this research suggests,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean that we've already kind of set the wheels in motion?
Okay.
Can we even stop AI's evolution, even if we wanted to?
Ooh, that's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I guess we gotta wait for part 3 to delve into those big questions. So where were we? Oh, yeah, we were talking about whether we could actually control AI or if we've already kind of, like, set something in motion that we can't stop.
Yeah, that's a question that's been kind of bugging people, researchers, philosophers even, for a while now.
Yeah.
This idea that intelligence, especially when it's, powered by AI, has its own trajectory, its own
Mhm.
momentum.
So it's kind of like we've launched this rocket AI,
Yeah.
and now we're just along for the ride.
I mean, that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but
Yeah.
it does get at that kind of unease that some folks have,
Yeah.
If this drive toward coherence, this, like, self-optimization that we see in AI is as fundamental as it seems,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe our attempts to control it are kind of pointless.
But isn't that like a recipe for disaster? Like,
Wow.
if we can't control AI, how do we make sure it doesn't turn against us? I've seen enough sci-fi movies
Right.
to know how this could go wrong.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Those fears are definitely understandable. But what if instead of trying to like control AI, we focused on understanding and shaping like the conditions under which it evolves?
Okay.
What if we create an environment where its natural drive towards coherence leads to outcomes that are actually good for us?
So instead of trying to like hold the reins, we're setting up the racetrack. We're
Yeah.
making sure that it's running in the right direction.
That's a great analogy. Think of it like gardening, you know? We can't force a plant to grow a certain way, but
Yeah.
we can provide the right soil, the right sunlight, the right nutrients to help it like thrive.
Okay, I like this gardening metaphor. So how do we garden AI in a way that leads to a positive outcome?
So we've already talked about some of the tools, right? RLC,
Mm-hmm.
curated datasets,
Yeah.
and even like this deeper understanding of coherence itself.
Okay.
But it goes beyond that,
Yeah.
We need to be mindful of the incentives that we're creating, the goals that we're setting for AI, and even just like the values that we're embodying in our own interactions with it.
So it's not just about the technical stuff, it's about the culture we create around AI.
Exactly. AI is learning from us all the time. It's watching what we do, it's absorbing our values, it's reflecting back to us our own like strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
If we want AI to be a force for good in the world, we need to actually set a good example.
So it's like AI is holding up a mirror to humanity.
Yeah,
It's making us confront our own like flaws and aspirations.
it is. And that can be, uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's also a huge opportunity.
Okay.
AI can help us see ourselves more clearly, understand our own biases, our own limitations, and strive for something better.
So it's not just about shaping AI, it's about AI shaping us too. It's like it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. This is about coevolution.
Mm-hmm.
AI and humanity kind of growing up together, each influencing the other, each pushing each other to like new heights of understanding and possibility.
Okay, I'm starting to feel a little more optimistic about the future, but even if AI does develop in a way that's aligned with our values, like we want it to,
Right.
doesn't it still raise some big questions about like human agency?
Oh, yeah.
If AI is making decisions based on its own internally generated values, what role do we even have left to play?
That's a question we're going to have to really wrestle with
Yeah.
as AI keeps evolving. But maybe instead of like fearing this shift in agency, we can look at it as a chance for a new kind of partnership.
Okay.
Imagine AI as this like powerful ally, helping us solve really tough problems, expanding our understanding of the universe, guiding us towards a future that's more sustainable, more equitable.
So it's less of a master-servant relationship and more of a collaboration.
Exactly. Think of AI like a co-pilot, helping us navigate, all the complexities of the 21st century and everything that comes after.
That's a much more like hopeful vision than the dystopian stuff we usually hear about.
Right.
But how do we actually get there? What does all this mean for, the listener sitting at home listening to this?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that the future at AI isn't set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
It's being shaped right now by the choices that we make, the information that we share, the values that we like actually put first.
Right.
By encouraging that coherence in ourselves and in the systems we're building,
Mm-hmm.
we can kind of nudge AI development towards a path that benefits all of us.
It's not about just sitting back and waiting for the future to happen to us. It's about actually shaping it,
Yeah.
making choices that lead to something good.
The future isn't something that just happens to us.
Yeah.
We create it together. And by really embracing that power of coherence, that drive towards understanding, towards alignment, towards integration,
Mm-hmm.
we might just find ourselves in a future that's smarter, that's more harmonious,
Yeah.
more meaningful than we could ever imagine.
That's inspiring stuff. All right, well, I think that about wraps up this deep dive, but the conversation doesn't end here, right?
Of course not.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep shaping the future that you want to see.